Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be. Join us on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration as we explore the world of leadership and personal growth. In each episode, we will explore the art and science of effective leadership, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from experts and thought leaders across various industries. And now your hosts, Dawn Marie Bornhammer, Maisha B. Hoy, Janelle E. Taylor, and Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be as you lead, empower, inspire, and achieve. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, Editor-in-Chief of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine.
And I'm Janelle Taylor, CEO and founder of the JTOA Corporation, where we optimize people, performance, and products.
Hello, everyone. I am Maisha Hoy. I am the CEO of BSHG, and we manage and market MaishaLemonadeStand.com, QBob, and Customer First Marketing.
And I'm Dawn Bornheimer, the founder and impact leader for Mission Inspired Consulting.
And we are truly elated to welcome Mr. Alan Zucker as our guest for this episode. Mr. Zucker has over 25 years of experience leading projects and project organizations and Fortune 100 companies. He is currently an instructor, consultant, and coach, sharing his leadership and project management knowledge with businesses across the nation as well as around the world. He teaches at several leading universities and national training companies, and his clients include Fortune 500 companies. Welcome to the show, Mr. Zucker.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me to join you.
Absolutely. We are here just ready to dive in to get all of your knowledge, all of your expertise, so our audience and listeners can be uplifted. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So can you tell us about your career journey? What led you to specialize in project management and then ultimately leadership?
Well, to be honest with you, the fact that I became a project manager was sort of by accident. I have my master's degree in economics from the University of Maryland, and my first big job out of school was working for the Treasury Department. I was running the Treasury bill, note, and bond auctions. I was borrowing money for the government. And in the wake of the Salomon Brothers bidding scandal in the early 90s, I was asked to be Treasury's project manager, working with the Federal Reserve of New York to automate the auctions. And I really enjoyed project management, didn't know anything about it, and I made a major career pivot. I then spent 14 years at MCI Telecommunications when folks used to pay money for long distance phone calls. And there I was managing the financial systems for the consumer business unit. And after MCI was acquired by Verizon, I then went to work at Fannie Mae. And I was at Fannie Mae for 11 years. I managed some really large programs there. And I also managed a project organization of about 175 people. And then actually, it's almost 10 years ago, I had someone teaching a class from my group. And I said, Carl, I want to be you when I grow up. He was just looking like he had so much fun teaching project management. He said, well, Alan, if that's what you want to do, here's my 5-year plan. Started executing the plan. And 3 years later, I made this career shift and started teaching. And as to your question about, what got me interested in leadership, from a very early age, actually very early in my career, I was a manager. When I was at Treasury, I was managing the team that was running the auctions, and there I was about 30 years old, managing a team of 20 people, and a lot of the folks were older than me. And when I was at MCI, I was a senior manager there, running a fairly good-sized group, about 25 folks. And I really love managing. I think one of the things I miss most about working for myself is just the fact that I don't get to lead big teams and deal with all those things that some people think are drudgery, but I think they're just wonderful. I just love the interaction and love trying to help people become better at what they do.
Wow, your journey is so colorful. I mean, just the paths that you've ventured through. You know, you say MCI. I'm like, oh my goodness, I remember MCI. So I love that and how it led to leadership, because project management is such a critical component to any organization. So I can definitely appreciate your journey. Thank you so much for that.
I too, like Dr. Sharon, I think project management is so fascinating. And whenever I've met a project manager in any company I work with, I'm like, tell me more, tell me more. But my question is about, I always think project managers are the de facto leader in the project. We listen to them, we look at timelines, we do all this project management stuff, but am I being naive? Does the PM view themselves as the leader of the project, or is it so many dependencies and variables when it comes into leading a project?
So the project manager is the leader of the team. And, it depends on if you're running a traditional project, you might be using more of a top-down approach, or if you're if you're executing an agile project, you're maybe using more of a servant leader approach. But when we think about it, there's the tactical skills that we think about with project management, developing timelines, creating, risk lists and managing change requests and all those kinds of things. But projects are about organizing people to get things done that we can't do alone. And so when we look at the things that really drive our projects, it's about people. It's managing our customers, our stakeholders. It's about managing our leaders, and it's about managing the team. And one of the things that we really need to think about most, particularly if we're talking about knowledge work projects, is that it's so important, it's so critical that we create the environment to unlock the creative knowledge and the creative energies of our team. And that's not easy, particularly when we're under so many other pressures, such as time pressures and budget pressure and demanding customers and stakeholders.
Yeah, that's why I think the project manager is the hero. That's why I understand how you looked at them and were like, yes, because how does this project manager keep the people, the processes, the technology, the timelines, all that in play? Yeah, you are the hero. They are the hero.
Well, I wish I would have known. I would have brought out my cape.
Maisha, I think I can double back on the hero for Alan Zucker here, because he was my hero and I was his student for a while, and he's amazing. So what I want to talk about is I want to talk about charitable support and community engagement, because project managers are in fact just they are the central nucleus for support. Alan, PM Essentials, your baby, born in 2016, and PMDAS. Can you share with our audience some of the examples of your charitable initiatives, how you've supported communities and organizations, by sharing why you give back, and share just an essential aspect of your work with both of those organizations, please?
Sure. You mentioned the Project Management Day of Service. The Project Management Day of Service, I believe, started in, maybe 2015 or so as an offshoot of the PMI Washington, D.C. chapter. And I actually participated in that event and several of the subsequent events. And it's a wonderful experience. Project managers devote one day to help nonprofits and charitable organizations improve how they work. And I've just found that so incredibly wonderful, because quite often when you're working with small nonprofits, the leaders are really, they've got lots of passion and lots of energy, but they sometimes don't have the same business skills or business acumen that we as project managers bring to a situation. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to work with others, help them clarify their vision or clarify their goals, or help them execute a much needed project. A couple of times when I was involved in the Day of Service events, we started out and the nonprofit said, this is what I'm interested in. And then as we began to delve in and talk about, well, what's your mission statement? What are your objectives and what are your goals? We realized that they were really interested in something a little bit different, and we were able to help guide them through that process. So that's been great. Additionally, just individually, I do some work with nonprofits. I really enjoy working with nonprofit boards. That's been very rewarding. And again, that's something where you've got folks that are volunteers, they come together and, just helping them with some, basic acumen, meeting management or, establishing guidelines and thinking about how do we approach, tough situations, can really make a big difference. And I've really enjoyed that work as well.
That's awesome. Making a difference is what you are doing. I remember being introduced to PMDAS by a gentleman who knew you, and this man became emotional by telling me all the things that you've done for him. And I was just like, I know, Helen, it was just an honor to participate. So continue. We'll see you in November at PMDAS. And again, thanks for your service.
Oh, it's going to be this November. Good. Because the last couple of years, it's actually conflicted with one of my University of Georgia classes, unfortunately.
I remember.
Hi, Alan. So I was thinking a lot about your credentials. And one thing I know for sure with project managers is they often have quite a few credentials. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the application of Agile as it relates to leadership. Some of the strongest project managers that I've met in my career also have this nuance as leaders. And they do a really beautiful job of meeting people where they are, but also empowering them to get their role accomplished to move things forward. So I'd love to just hear from you some of the synergies between the Agile framework and leadership styles and how one can serve the other in support of getting the job done.
Okay. So I think, and I don't want to get too historical, but I think it's really helpful to think about the long arc of management and management philosophy. Back in the late 1800s, Frederick Winslow Taylor talked about a management style where managers told people what to do, they set the pace, they trained people, and people were just widgets. They were just part of the job of production. Starting in the 1950s, Peter Drucker started talking about knowledge workers and that knowledge workers knew more about what they were doing than their bosses. And then Agile really built upon that. When we look at the principles of the Agile Manifesto, we talk about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And then when we look at the 12 principles, we talk about building teams around motivated individuals. We also recognize that the best architecture and design comes from our self-managing and self-organizing teams. So if we are being good Agile leaders, the things we need to do is create a psychologically safe environment for our teams. We need to empower our teams so that they are responsible for making decisions. And we really see ourselves as coaches, as mentors, as people to help our teams improve versus telling them what they need to do. And doing that in a lot of environments is still really difficult. It was interesting that during COVID, I was reading articles about organizations that were putting productivity monitoring software on people's computers, and lawyers and consultants and people that were, paid by billable hours. They were being compensated based on their fingers being on the keyboard. And very sadly, we were taking knowledge workers and making them like piece rate workers, really no better than folks that were working in factories over 100 years ago. So it's, if we're going to trust people, if we really want to be competitive in this dynamic environment, and we recognize that the people on our teams are at least as smart as we are, we need to give them the opportunity to excel and promote that and not be intimidated by it as well.
I love that. And I think the one element that you illuminated is so important, that trust element, right? You built this team for a reason. These people are respectively good at what they do in that pocket of what you need done. And allowing them to shine in those moments, it only allows the project to be more successful and the outcomes to be delivered. So I appreciate your perspective on that. Thank you.
So, Alan, you published a recent article entitled Project Decision Making. You stated that making good decisions is a critical project management skill. You also said that defining the roles and the role assignments creates clarity and sets expectations. You referenced the RAPID model: recommend, agree, perform, input, decide. Can you delve just a little deeper as to how this process will allow stakeholders to better understand their limitations and their scopes for these clearly defined roles?
Sure. So to back up just a little bit, when we think about making decisions, and when you look at the data, look at survey data, lots of folks say, the majority of people say, my organization isn't that good at making decisions. And when we peel it back, one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons I think that we're not good at making decisions, we're not intentional about the process on how we're going to do it. We don't define the process. We don't talk about who's making decisions. We don't talk about what people's roles are in that decision-making process. So the RAPID model that you referenced it's based on an article out of the Harvard Business Review, and it talks about assigning role: recommend, agree, perform, providing input, and decide. And so we've defined this various roles. And one of the things that I found very interesting, once upon a time I was asked to be part of a steering committee for implementing some new project management software at the company I was working at. And a good number of the project managers worked for me. And I thought that, my recommendations were going to rule the day. And then we got into a little bit of a dispute, a little bit of a debate about how we would implement a feature. And then someone said, well, Alan, thanks for your opinion, but it's really, that person over there that's making the decision. And that was really frustrating because, no one told us what our roles were beforehand. And so the RAPID model is a great model. I've also adopted that model. Earlier we were talking about some of the work I do with nonprofit boards. And one of the things I did there is, clarified the role of the board. And so one of the things we talked about is if you're putting something on the board agenda, we talk about, well, what do you want from the board? And it was, we're here to inform you. We're here to consult. We want your opinion. Or this is something that we need a decision on. And by being explicit and intentional about what it was that we expected from the board when we're presenting information, it just made everything so much easier. The organization that I'm referring to, they were renovating their building. And, I heard that before I got involved, they spent 2 board meetings discussing the paint color. Well, here, rather than having those very unproductive conversations, it's, look, we are informing you. This is the color that we're going to paint the walls, or this is the color of the carpet. We don't need this is not a decision-making thing. And so when we talk about what people's roles are and our expectations, it just makes everything so much easier and so much better in terms of how do we work as teams or as organizations.
I can definitely appreciate that. And especially when you said we have to decide how to decide. Like, I absolutely love that because that really is the nuance of it all. So thank you. Thank you for that.
So I'm not sure if I want to hear about successful collaboration or your thoughts, because I was on your website today and I've never heard of hybrid project management. So I'm back. What is that? And then I saw you also were talking about AI. And I'm wondering, can you tie in project management to AI in the future and where we're going with that? Sure,
I'll do my best. And that's, that's really one of the $64,000 question these days. Last month, I was at an Agile conference, and I'm going to share one of the phrases that a couple of the folks used there. And the phrase they said was, AI is not going to take your job. It's going to be someone that knows how to use AI that you need to worry about. And it's funny because I shared that phrase with my daughter, and she was and she's used that at work, and people think it's the greatest thing as well. And, AI will help make our jobs easier. But AI is not going to replace what we do as project managers. I mean, it's wonderful to have a bot that's going to take notes for you and identify what the major action items are. Or it's wonderful to have a tool that will allow you to, where you input requirements and it actually creates screen mock-ups for you. And I actually saw someone demonstrate that at the conference. So that will allow us to do things that just took a lot of time to do them so much more quickly. But we still need people that know how to think and how to use the tools and understand what it means. I'm old enough to remember the days before everybody had personal computers at work. And I remember, I was working at a consulting firm at the time, and we would write our material out longhand, and we'd give it to the people that would enter it into the word processor. And then we would get the printouts out, and we'd have to mark it up, and there would be notes all over the place, and you add pages and this and that. And, having a personal computer just made everything so much easier, but it didn't make us obsolete. It just allowed us to do things that provided greater value and to do those things much more quickly. As you mentioned, I write a lot, and it's been interesting. I use Grammarly. They've recently introduced, AI assisted features, and I find that to be really helpful, particularly when I'm looking at a sentence where I'm like, yeah, that's not exactly what I want to say. Can you suggest a different way of stating that? Or can you suggest a different word? And what I found is that by using that AI assist versus, having the AI write it for me, which wouldn't be very good, I've become a better author myself.
I agree with you on, I was a fear factor with AI, and now I'm just embracing it as another technology that is going to help me do my job better, faster, easier. And if I do embrace it, I won't be replaced. So I think that's a good message for all of us to hear.
Yeah, and it's, you need to know how to use it. It's another tool in the toolbox, but you still, the human brain is not going to be replaced that easily for creative work, for organizing people, and for, bringing people together and leading people and building teams. A bot is not going to do that for you.
We hope, but I agree with you.
Hopefully not in my lifetime. Maybe
you.
in my grandkids' lifetime. But
right, maybe in our grandkids.
People is the magic word, Alan. I think transforming the industry is where I want to kind of lead on to this question. In my opinion, I think you had a humanistic approach to project management, but I want to know, do you have a specific niche, or are there any advancements that you hope to bring to the project management industry through your advisement and coaching services?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think that when I work with people, when I teach, when I also do consulting work, I think one of the things I really try to focus on is recognizing that we all learn differently, we all approach problems differently, and the importance of honoring what makes everybody unique. I remember really early on in one of my project management classes, one of my students said, I don't read. I'm like, oh my God, how are you going to pass the PMP exam when I just gave you this, 600-page book to read? But she said, I love, the online conversations. I love the online material that you have. And she passed the exam. And that was a really intimidating thing as very early on in my teaching career. But I recognized that it's very important as an instructor, as a coach, as a consultant, to understand what people's individual needs are. And I think if you look at, the body of work that I've written, and And July 1st, I will have been writing blogs for 10 years, and I will have created my 121st blog. A lot of the things I talk about are how do we focus on people? And how do we recognize that people are really the key to our project success? And you'll see it coming out in multiple themes. When we were talking about decision making a second ago, or when we talk about empowering our teams, those are really fundamental skills. And I think that a lot of people, particularly when we start out in our careers, depending on the bosses that we have, we don't recognize that right away. We think that the way to be a boss is to be tough and to be riding roughshod over people. So I really try to, get people to move beyond that and really take that humanistic, that approach that really honors and respects what makes everybody unique.
I think that is so important, and gone are the days of the C-suite, autocratic leadership. I love that you instill adaptability and versatility, because people are drawn to where they feel that they can grow and be empowered. So yes, and thank you for being that type of instructor and thought leader.
So it sounds like you wear many hats, and that you've done some mentoring and coaching and consulting. You've been invited inside of businesses perhaps that need you to help right the ship for them. And I'm curious to talk a little bit about your perspective on earning the right with an organization. They often hire you because of your experience and expertise, but maybe some of the things that you guide them to do are going to force them to look in the mirror a little bit about what they haven't been doing right. But you need them to move in the direction with you. So what does it look like for someone coming into a role like that? And what do you do to kind of build that rapport early on so that people trust you and are willing to follow your guidance and instruction?
So I think one of the things that I really focus on is that in a consulting role, it's about building that relationship, and it's about meeting the customer's expectations. And so one of the things I do, at the beginning of an engagement, and even at the beginning of any given meeting, is, what is a good outcome here? What is the outcome that you want from this meeting? What is the outcome you want from this engagement? And I also emphasize that getting from where you are to where you want to be is a journey. And you're not going to get there overnight. And it's important that, particularly when we're looking, or when the client is looking to change the way their organization operates, that they're talking about people. And that people don't wake up one morning and just because you've done a reorganization, things are going to change. We want to provide people with the appropriate motivation. And we also don't want to think that we're so brilliant as leaders or consultants or managers that we have all the answers. So that you want to bring people along and listen to what they have to say. And I think you get more credibility by listening and adapting than potentially you do by telling people what their solution is going to be. Interestingly enough, just yesterday, I was working with one of the units at the local community college. They asked me to come in and help them set up a process for managing their work. And it's a school that I worked at, that I'm a teacher at. So it was just fun. It was interesting to go in and work with a different group. And as I was going through, folks were saying, well, we do it this way. We use this tool. And I'm like, great. Let's talk about some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses. Would it make sense to use this other tool instead? And they looked at it, and it's like, it's got the same functionality. And originally, I had a very different perspective of what we were going to do, but I learned, or I knew, that it was more valuable to hear what they were doing, to meet them where they are, make some suggestions, and then have a conversation about what would be best. And I plan to come back in another month and a month after that, and whatever the time period is, and always make those small adjustments and small changes. Two of the articles that I wrote, several years ago, were about organizational change. And you're really talking about how do we change organizations. And one of the things that I recognized is that a lot of groups feel that organizations they're like a traditional project. You can plan it out and execute it and everything will work great. And the analogy I used there in those series of articles was that when we think about organizational change, we should really think of those like a road trip. A little bit of spontaneity, a lot of uncertainty, the willingness to change course, to adapt, to adjust, and that will make us more successful than thinking that we know the answer. And I try to bring that humility and that humbleness to my engagements because I think people appreciate that.
No, thank you for that. And it's so interesting to hear you kind of unpack that. But I think there's an element of active listening on all sides that you illuminated there. And that leads to somewhat of a follow-up question I have in regards to an emerging leader. What is one bit of advice you would offer an emerging leader that may have strong project management skills, but the people that they are in project with, that they're working with, maybe newer to their individual roles? And what would you say to that emerging leader in terms of advice or best practice for them to really bring everyone together and move them along?
Sure. One of the models of leadership that I believe in, or the types of leadership I believe in, is we've got, your formal leadership power, your expertise power, and then the third one is relationship power. Formal power, the power vested in you by the organization to hire, fire, deprive people of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Expertise power, most of us aren't necessarily going to be the smartest in the room, so that's not necessarily going to be a form of power we use. But the power, the relationship power that we have, the ability to build relationships with people is the most enduring. And we build relationships with our teams, one day at a time. And it's the small things. It's, coming in on a Monday morning and asking someone how their weekend was, and knowing that their kids play soccer, their kids play football, and asking them how their game was, or if they're cat people or dog people, and asking them about their pets. And I think that when we build relationships with people, or actually, I don't think, my experience is that when you build relationships with people, they trust you. And when you're authentic about building those relationships with them, they even trust you more. And they will follow you to the ends of the earth because you know that you have their best interest at heart and that you are there to support them as a leader. So I think that relationship power is a major lesson for anyone to learn, even early in their career. And along with that is, understanding what people's needs are, and also what their communication styles are, and using that to be more, self-aware, helping to build your emotional intelligence, and use that as a very, valuable skill in your leadership toolkit.
Thank you very much. That's very aligned, with what I was hoping to hear from you, honestly, because I think relationships is so powerful. The other thing that I heard you say, which I think is important to kind of reflect back, is this opportunity to ask people how they want to be communicated with, right? We often default to our own communication style, and the best leaders ask others how they want to be communicated with. So thank you for illuminating that. I think that's an important lesson for an emerging leader to be mindful of as well. And that's how you get the most and the best out of individuals, is to show up in that relationship, curate it, build it, but also open those lines of communication in a way that works for both parties. So Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the modules I teach in a lot of my project management classes is using the DISC behavior model as a way of understanding how to communicate more effectively with others. So, I've used DISC, I've used insight discovery, which are very, very similar models. But when we understand our natural communication styles and the natural communication styles of the people that we're working with, it just helps that relationship along so far. Because rather than thinking, well, why is that person not responding to me the way I'd like to be responded to? It's recognizing that they're different, and they're quiet, and they're reserved, and they want a lot of data. They don't want to be, just having a conversation. That's just not the way they roll. And, being able to modify how you work with others and how you communicate with others really helps you build much, much stronger relationships.
Wow, wow, wow. Mr. Zucker, we want to say thank you. Thank you for imparting your knowledge, your experience, all the things that you shared with us about project management and interceding with leadership. So we thank you, and we want to give you this space to share how can our listeners and viewers connect with you, how can they follow you, and keep abreast of all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is through my website, pmessentials.us. I'm also on LinkedIn, Alan I. Zucker, and I also have a business page, Project Management Essentials, on LinkedIn. And I publish my blogs on a monthly basis. So if people are interested in signing up for my blog, they can do that from the website. It's also available on LinkedIn. Calendar on the website. I also have a calendar of future events if people are interested in my classes. And, I always love to get emails. I learn so much from getting emails from people, the questions that they have, the challenges they're facing. And I'm really great about responding. And I'm also happy to talk to people. Just the other day, I went to GW for college, and I had someone who just graduated law school who wanted to be a project manager, and he reached out to me, and I spent about 45 minutes talking to him about project management and how does he merge his law degree and his top secret clearance and his project management work into what's going to be the next step in his career. And it was just a wonderful conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much. And to our viewers and our listeners, we thank you as well for joining us on Leading with Purpose podcast today. Again, I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
I am Maisha Bihoy.
I am Janelle E. Taylor.
And I'm Dawn Bornheimer. As you navigate your leadership journey, please remember that leading with purpose is not just a philosophy, but it is a deep commitment to making a positive impact.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your network and don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an opportunity to explore the intersection of leadership and purpose.
And remember, continue to lead, empower, inspire, and achieve.
And until next time, lead with passion, lead with positive intention, and by all means, continue to lead with purpose. Thank you for joining the Leading with Purpose podcast. Please join us every Monday for a new episode.